Okay, here we go. We are going to start now part three, which is translanguaging. So, in this section, I'm going to talk more specifically about using English and using Chinese from mostly the teacher's perspective, but maybe a little bit also from the students as well. And if you remember, before I jump in, at the very beginning, I mentioned that as a bilingual teacher, CLIL or EMI, you're not an English teacher. No one is saying that you need to use 100% English unless it is a real EMI class. It's about how to balance the English and the Chinese. Okay, so let me begin. Okay, so we'll start with my overview. We're going to look at definition of translanguaging. And then we're going to understand the role of L1, that's language one, that's mostly Chinese for our students as a learning resource, not a crutch. We're going to look at strategic translation. Not everything needs to be said in both languages. Encourage students to move between languages to build understanding and express themselves. Build a positive language environment. We talked about that one already, that values both English and Mandarin, and plan translanguaging moments purposefully, not randomly. This one's important. Okay, so let's jump in. First one, definition. So what is translanguaging? Okay, so a couple formal definitions for you. Translanguaging transcends code switching, allowing bi or multilingual individuals to construct and employ original and complex interrelated discursive practices with a view to gaining and constructing knowledge, making sense, articulating and communicating their thoughts, and performing their identities. Okay, so before I try to simplify that, let me give you one more. The second one is pedagogical translanguaging. So it's used to assist with language learning and somewhat differs from spontaneous translanguaging. Just allowing your students to speak to each other in Chinese during group work is not pedagogical translanguaging. Teachers need to guide students to use their repertoire of languages in a way that promotes learning and the activation of their cognitive skills. Okay, so let me go back to this one. So what does it mean to say that we allow translanguaging? If you think about a person's brain, inside any one person's brain, there are actually many different groups of knowledge or types of language that we learn, right? So if you think about a typical student in Taiwan, for sure they've got Mandarin because that's what they learn in school. Probably they've got some Taiwanese. Maybe they even have some Japanese or Korean, and it's very likely that most of them or all of them have some English in there as well. But you also have other languages like mathematical formula and other subjects that they learn. And so when we want our students to answer a question or communicate, translanguaging means you allow them to use all of the information in their brain to come up with their best answer or to have the best output. And I'm going to give you a couple practical examples that you can think about. Okay, so here is what I want you to think about. And you can probably pause the video and just look at this screen for a while and think about this. So I've got some topics on the screen: the life cycle of a frog, how to invest money for your future. Ooh, I got a mistake there. Making a bowl out of clay, not making making just one and using AI to make a lesson plan. Okay, so 4 totally different topics. So what I'd like you to think about, first of all, is choose one of those topics that you think you know probably the best, okay? So let's say it's the life cycle of a frog. So if I asked you to describe to us in Mandarin, forget translating right now, just in Mandarin, could you describe the life cycle of a frog? Maybe some of you yes, some of you no. Okay. How about in Taiwanese? Could you do that in 100% Taiwanese? Okay, how about English? Could you do that in English? And I think what you find, unless you are very talented, is that some languages are better for explaining certain topics. Maybe down here we have another one which is better for your Taiwanese. And maybe there's one here that you learned in English, and so you're better at it. This is what translanguaging means. We don't say to you, you must use Mandarin to tell us the life cycle of a frog, or you must use Taiwanese to describe how to invest money for your future. And we usually don't make them just use one language. We allow them to use all of their languages to come up with the best answer. This is what translanguaging means. Now, of course, this one here, pedagogical translanguaging, is more about what's happening in the classroom, because we can't just let students always use Chinese, because they will. So we need to create opportunities for them when they're going to use English, when they're allowed to use both their languages or all of their languages. So that's the difference. This is just in general. Pedagogical means in the classroom. So we're going to focus more on this one today. Okay, so let's move on. So here's a practical example. When you're teaching a new concept, the teacher can allow students to use the L1 first in order to confirm their understanding, then switch to English for practice and use, okay? So maybe you have something that you need to allow them to use Chinese first in order to assess whether they really understand or not. So you've got the Chinese sentence first, but then we're gonna switch it up to English and say, okay, now I want you to try it in English. Okay, this is just one way of doing this. Okay. Number 2, use strategic translation, okay? Not everything needs to be said in both languages. And I think this is a very common thing that bilingual teachers do, because they're afraid that their English is not good enough. So even though they say it in English, they switch to Chinese just to make sure their students understand. The second reason is they think their students' English is not good enough. So they say it in English and then they translate to Chinese. But this is a very inefficient way to teach, because first of all, you need to say everything 2 times. Nobody has that much time where they can say everything twice. But second, it's not good for the students if you always translate. It's okay to let them struggle a little bit when you say something in English. Okay, so avoid automatic translation of every sentence. It wastes time and it will reduce attention to the English input. If I know my teacher's always going to say Chinese, why listen to the English? I'll just wait for the Chinese version. Use L1 only when there's a learning purpose, like clarifying a key point, important vocabulary, instructions that students are struggling with. You have to figure this out on your own. What are the parts where I really need to use Chinese, just to make sure that they can get it. But you should also teach students to expect English first, and then Mandarin will come if needed. Okay, practical example. So my science teacher, after introducing evaporation, asked, can someone say what the means? Okay, so you see you're using both languages here. Math teacher, a prime number has only 2 factors, 1 and itself. Okay, so here's a tip. If you're really trying to push a lot of English and less Chinese, what you can do is have a 1-minute Mandarin zone. So you tell students, okay, we're gonna have 1 minute Chinese time. You can ask questions or clarify with your peers in Mandarin for 1 minute, then we're going to switch back to English. Just if you're really pushing the extra English, you can do something like that. Another thing you can do is, here, it's on this page, so I'll wait. Okay. So number 3, encourage students to move between languages to build understanding and express themselves. So this is more common. And this is also what I do with my students. I let them make the choice, but you can let them draft their ideas first in Chinese and then express them in English. So actually, this will really challenge them because they need to translate, and they also need to, think about, does everything make sense? Group work as well can begin in Mandarin, and actually anything they discuss with each other, it can be in Chinese. It's fine as long as they know the output has to be in English. And in the beginning especially, you can accept partial responses or mixed answers as a bridge to English only. So it depends how far you want to go. Do you want English only by the end of your school year? If so, you can start with a mix. But maybe mix is enough for you. You can allow students to use both languages at the same time. I mean, if this is a bilingual country, why can't we use multiple languages at the same time? Okay. Build a positive language environment that values both English and Mandarin. So of course, we don't want to say things like this language is good, English is better, Chinese is not good, don't use Taiwanese. We never want to do stuff like that. I know you already know that. Make students feel confident using all of their resources. And celebrate when students make connections across languages. Let them feel like this is a very normal thing to do. Many countries around the world, even in Taiwan, right? People switch back and forth between Mandarin and Taiwanese all the time. It's okay to do that with Mandarin and English as well. So display key vocabulary in both English and Mandarin on the board or on the wall. Allow students to use Chinese in their peer explanations, present in English. Praise translanguaging behavior as a smart strategy, not a failure to stay in English. Like if they switch to Chinese to make their answer better, and then they switch back to English again to use the vocabulary, let them know this was a very smart strategy because they were able to use both languages to get their answer across. Don't say to them something like, oh, you had to use Chinese, that's bad. Try not to make it like that. Okay, number 5, plan translanguaging moments purposefully, not randomly. So the one thing you want to try to avoid is just switching back and forth randomly between English and Chinese. It's something that you should plan before you get into the classroom. So as it says here, effective translanguaging is planned, not improvised or reactive. Think ahead. When will students really need that Chinese support? And when can I really use English only? When will that be best for them? And then plan your lesson accordingly. Use translanguaging as a scaffold. It's for helping students answer, then gradually reduce the dependence. So eventually, maybe the class can become like an EMI classroom, but in the beginning, it doesn't need to be. So some examples of what I'm talking about: before a complex reading or experiment, preview vocabulary in both languages. After a difficult explanation, ask students to restate it in Mandarin and then try again in English. And you can have maybe a very high level student will say it in English, and then you can ask another student in the class, could you summarize that using Chinese? Make sure everyone can understand. And something else you can do is use bilingual exit tickets in your classroom, written or spoken, where they have to give one sentence in Chinese and one sentence in English before they're allowed to leave. And it could be about anything in the class that you did that day. Okay, practical tip for translanguaging. In your lesson plan, if you're making an actual lesson plan, mark the points where Chinese may help clarify, and then plan how are you going to get back to English. Don't just, like I said, randomly do it in the beginning. Actually write it down. Right here, I'm going to use Chinese if I need to because I don't think they will understand. Okay, now how do I get it back into English afterwards? So as I mentioned, don't let language use in your lesson be random. You won't be able to control the amount of English or Chinese, and probably it will be mostly Chinese after that, and you will forget about the purpose of your class, which is to use both languages. Okay, so let me get rid of that. Okay, Some methods for promoting translanguaging in the classroom. These are practical things that you can do. Label your classroom objects in multiple languages. Give students with all levels of language proficiency a chance to succeed. So if you know this one student is not very strong at English, just let them use 1 or 2 words of English and mostly Chinese. It's okay. Provide appropriately leveled books in all target languages. Don't push the use of English too much. Be very patient. This takes a long time. Plan ahead which parts of your class should include which language. Give students clear instructions on what you expect. So let them know, I expect by the end of this semester, all of your output should be in English. Utilize group work often. Group work is very helpful. They're not only helping each other with the content, but they're helping each other with the English. Gives you a little more confidence. And most important, be a good model. If you want students to use English in your class, you have to use it too. And you can't complain about it. You have to like it. You have to support it. Students will follow. It takes time, but they will eventually follow. Okay, so this is a final reflection activity I was going to do if we were together in a group, but since it's in video form, I think you should take a little bit of time and reflect on something that you will try in the future. So think back on our 3 main themes today. I talked about classroom English, instructional and interactive English, and translanguaging. So which specific strategy, technique, or idea from today do you want to try in your own bilingual classroom, and why? I think you should really think about that. What are some things that you could actually implement in your own classroom that you're not doing now? Okay, everybody, that is it for the 3 videos on today's topic. Thank you very much for your attention. I did put my email address on the very first slide, so any of this content, if it's not clear, please feel free to send me an email and I'll be happy to get back to you. All right, everybody, take care.